Someone you know, a household name, just said that President Trump opposes Jesus by fighting the Iranian radical Islamic tyranny. That same person just said that people who oppose the Iranian regime are themselves evil and that they are trying to deceive you that Islam is the enemy. Also, those same terrible people are turning President Trump into a slave. Is that famous person Zohran Mamdani? Is it the new leadership in Iran? No, of course not. It's Tucker Carlson.
So Ben Shapiro just dropped a brutal takedown of Tucker Carlson's pro-Iran propaganda, and the timing couldn't be more critical. With Trump back in office facing down Iranian threats, Tucker's actively undermining American foreign policy from within conservative media. We're breaking down exactly how this demoralization campaign works.
He actually believes them. What he is doing is purposeful and terrible and anti-American. He wants to demoralize Americans to tell us that America itself is fatally flawed, Islamophobic, run by a secret cabal, its institutions corrupted, its central principles nefarious. If he can wreck how Americans think about America, then maybe he can pave the way to something he likes better. Well, you know who else believes all of that? Hassan Piker, Zohran Mamdani, Bernie Sanders, the Ayatollahs for that matter. Which is why, right now, they seem to all be on the same side.
This alignment isn't accidental. Tucker's adopted the exact same anti-American framework pushed by Tehran's propaganda machine, that America is inherently corrupt, controlled by shadowy forces, and needs fundamental transformation. It's textbook psychological warfare, and he's broadcasting it to millions of conservatives daily.
The people in charge don't want you to know this, but Muslims love Jesus. So first of all, the people in charge don't want... Who are the people in charge? Donald Trump doesn't want you to know this? He's the president. J.D. Vance doesn't want you to know. Who are the people in charge? Who are these nefarious others? I have some ideas as to who Tucker is talking about, but it says the people in charge don't want you to know this, but Muslims love Jesus. Islam reveres him as a major prophet and messenger of the Lord, believes he performs miracles, and states that he will return to earth to defeat the Antichrist. That's why Donald Trump's painting depicting himself as the son of God offended the president of Iran. It was an attack on his religion as well as Christianity. Are you getting all this? According to Tucker Carlson, remember that silly painting, that AI painting that President Trump put up and then took down where he said he thought he was a doctor and people thought, oh no, he's like Jesus there. According to Tucker Carlson, Iran was offended by that image.
Notice the conspiracy language here. The people in charge, while Trump is literally president. Tucker's painting Iran's theocratic regime as Christianity's defender, while America fights actual Iranian proxies. This is pure gaslighting, designed to confuse conservatives about who their real enemies are.
He says, quote, Muslims emphasize that Jesus is mentioned frequently in the Quran, that Maryam, is honored with an entire chapter named after her, that Islam acknowledges Jesus as a prophet of God. Superficially, this sounds appealing, especially to uninformed Christians who assume that this overlap must represent genuine common ground. But when examined closely, this claim collapses. The Jesus and Mary of the Quran are not the biblical figures known to Christians, and they are certainly not honored. They are appropriated, rewritten, and weaponized in order to dismantle the very foundations of Christianity. Islam does not respect Jesus, it negates him. It does not honor Mary, it exploits her. By the way, the same thing is true of Moses. Every reference to them in the Quran functions, not to elevate them, but to conscript them into Muhammad's project of replacing Christianity with Islam.
The expert testimony here from Shahram Hadian, a former Muslim turned pastor, is devastating to Tucker's narrative. Hadian spent decades studying Islamic theology before converting. His credibility on this topic is unassailable. Tucker's promoting surface-level talking points that crumble under theological scrutiny.
When I say not well treated, I mean they basically don't exist because majority Muslim countries have been turned into non-safe places for Christians. Places that used to be Christian, like Lebanon, have been turned into hellholes for Christians. Places like Algeria, that once were Christian, are now totally Muslim. There is a reason that the only country in the Middle East with an actual organically growing Christian population is, wait for it, Israel. Okay, but Tucker Carlson is running a propaganda op. In fact, Milk Bar TV has done a good job of tracing Tucker Carlson's warm words about Islam, which is, again, kind of strange from Tucker here. And
the data backs this up completely. Lebanon's Christian population dropped from 78% in 1932 to roughly 30% today. Egypt's Coptic Christians face regular persecution. Meanwhile, Israel's Christian population has grown from 34,000 in 1948 to over 180,000 today. The only Middle Eastern success story.
The goal of Tucker Carlson here is right now to undermine the president in a time of war against a radical fundamentalist Islamist state, and to undermine the West in that same battle more generally. Tucker is trying to set up a straw man that a war against the Iranian regime is a war against Islam itself. Now, first of all, that is a total lie. Nobody with a brain believes this. You have to have read 0 books to believe this. For example, you know who's in favor of what President Trump is doing in Iran. The Saudis, who, wait for it, are Muslim. And you know who else is in favor of what President Trump has been doing? The UAE, wait for it, Muslim. And Bahrain, also Muslim. Well, not only that, Tucker, of course, is going further. He's trying to claim that a war against Iran's Sharia law regime, the greatest terror state on planet Earth, is by proxy a war on Jesus and Christianity, which is quite crazy.
This is the key point. Tucker's actively sabotaging Trump's Iran strategy while our president is in active confrontation with Tehran. Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Bahrain all support Trump's Iran policy because they understand the regional threat. Tucker's either ignorant or deliberately subversive.
Who could it be? Who could it be? Somebody's trying to manipulate the Christians into fighting with the Muslims. Who could Tucker be talking about? I don't know. It's a gigantic mystery. Quote, yesterday's newsletter pointed out Islam's relationship with Jesus. It set off a firestorm largely because most Americans do not realize the overlap between Christianity and the Muslim faith. That is no accident. I mean, some of us have read some books, and it turns out that the overlap between Christianity and the Muslim faith amounted for the first millennium and a half of Islam's existence to basically continuous war between Muslim countries and Christian countries. But he says it's no accident. You are all being deceived by the deceivers. Quote, the forces supporting the Iran war do not want the public to realize that the Quran heralds the Christian savior as a prophet and messenger of the Lord. Again,
the anti-Semitic dog whistles are unmistakable here. When Tucker talks about mysterious third parties manipulating Christians into fighting Muslims, he's trafficking in centuries-old conspiracy theories. This rhetoric has real consequences. It's the same framework used by actual extremists.
Excuses mass killings of innocents. Okay. Again, likening terrorist groups to Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay. For those who don't know the Old Testament, and I count Tucker among them because he clearly has very little fluency with it. I have some fluency with it since I've gone through it, 50 times in the original Hebrew at this point. But if we are talking about Amalek, Amalek is a nation that attacked the Israelites as they were coming out of Egypt. And there's an injunction in the Bible that Jews are supposed to remember what Amalek did to them, and they are supposed to wipe out the memory of Amalek. Now, here is the thing. No one knows who Amalek is. This is black letter Hebrew law doctrine. This is Jewish law doctrine. No one knows who Amalek is. And thus, the injunction to quote-unquote wipe out Amalek does not apply to any group of people. That is not the way it works. When Benjamin Netanyahu invokes Amalek, he invokes it as an idea of evil. And he invokes it specifically with regard to Hamas, a terrorist group. But of course, Tucker wants to claim that Jews are genocidal because that allows him to support people who actually are, in fact, genocidal and pretend that Hamas is, in fact, just a political group or whatever.
The religious scholarship here is spot on. Tucker's twisting Jewish theology he clearly doesn't understand to portray Israel's fight against Hamas terrorists as religious extremism. Meanwhile, he's defending Iran, a regime that literally executes religious minorities and funds global terrorism.
You're being manipulated by those people, and so is President Trump. Again, this is part and parcel of a broader demoralization op Tucker has been running for years at this point, drawing solidarity with America's enemies, including Russia and China, while declaring that we in the United States are unfree pawns of those nefarious forces, that America is somehow being run by the Zionists and their evil-doing messengers, the Christian Zionists and pro-Israel Jewish neocons. Remember, according to Tucker, the Iranian government and Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis, they're really not evil. The neocons are, and by neocons, you know exactly who he means. But if he just means people who oppose radical Islamist terrorism, that might include, Muslims like the Saudis and the UAE and Bahrain, all of whom are supporting the president in this current war. But of course, Tucker thinks that President Trump has been mind-slaved by you know who.
Tucker's completely inverted moral reality. He's portraying terrorist organizations that murder civilians as victims, while casting America and Israel as the real villains. This isn't just wrong, it's actively harmful to American security interests and our alliance structure.
But here's the thing. This kind of crap has consequences, not just for the war in Iran and the undermining of American morale and the lies being told, but for American life more broadly. Already coming up, we'll get into the other big story of the day and how it's linked to this sort of demoralization op. Erica Kirk had to cancel a live event with J.D. Vance. Why? What's going on? We'll get into it in a moment. First,
Trump calling Tucker low IQ shows even he recognizes the danger here. But this propaganda doesn't just undermine foreign policy, it radicalizes domestic audiences too. When mainstream conservative voices legitimize anti-American conspiracy theories, the consequences spill into real-world violence.